Welcome to American Dealmaker. After the episode, it's your turn. So before we start and jump in, I want to show you guys the deal room, which we're situated in now, is where American Dealmaker takes place. So this is our deal room. As you can see, there is a lot of space to deliberate back and forth. Welcome to American Dealmaker. I'm your host, Constance Castillo, startup founder and dealmaker. On this show, we decide if the idea is a big break or a big mistake. And on today's episode, we're starting with my idea. I'm going to pitch my show idea for this show, the American Dealmaker. After the episode, head out to Twitter where you can vote on if it's a big break or a big mistake. If it's a big break, we'll use the handshake emoji, and you guys can let me know if I have a deal. If it's a big mistake, you guys can use the trash can emoji and let me know that it's a big mistake. Welcome to the Deal Room. This show is going to be a place where startups push the envelope on big ideas. They'll come to pitch to you, the deal makers, their ideas where you can vote. We're focused on startups in San Francisco that come to shake things up. On this show, you'll watch entrepreneurs and get to know them in their entrepreneurial journey and get to know founders who want to make bold, transformative changes. I want you to be wondering, would you do a deal? And after the show, you can let the startup know if they got a deal. This structure is basically a pitch show, like many of those out there, and the format is iterable. So we can start with this format and maybe one day we can choose a different one. Right now, the deal makers are deciding if the startup has a deal through a poll on Twitter. One day it could change. So today I am going to do a solo episode, and I am excited to let you guys know more about me and my journey, why I'm doing this show. My name is Constance, I'm a startup founder and I'm based in San Francisco, and today I'm entering the deal room. So now I'm gonna pitch this show idea to you, the deal makers. Welcome to American Dealmaker. I'm about to start my pitch. What I'm going to be pitching is this show, American Dealmaker. Why is this needed? I am someone who consumes lots of content about entrepreneurship and business. I love audiobooks, I love going on YouTube and podcasts to find out what are startup founders talking about, how are they building things. And this is something that inspires me in my own business, which is a social media app called Applause, a way to socially share your notes. There are a lot of things about me that are different when it comes to being a startup founder. I am a filmmaker, I studied art in college, so I have a very creative background, and when I look at the startup world, I have that perspective. That's something that I want to share in the space of startup content, and something that I think is needed. There is not a lot of content about startups that allows you to hear from early stage startup founders. And for me, that's something I'm extremely interested in. I'm extremely interested in ideas and how things get built and the behind the scenes of all those crazy startup stories that we're always hearing about. So for me, this is a way to introduce startups in San Francisco, what people are doing. So that's the high level pitch. And there's lots of startups in this space. There's Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. There's a podcast called The Pitch where startup founders can pitch and get investment. That's something that for me is a great indicator that what I'm doing here could really work, because their podcast works with Fox Media. They have been going for a while, so it's definitely an area where there's a lot of innovation, a lot of iteration, and I want to bring my perspective to that. So my purpose is to give these startups a chance to pitch to you guys, the deal makers, and let them pitch to you for a change and see if they can defend their ideas. I wanted to create a video podcast because as a filmmaker, I'm really interested in the video aspect of things. I love filmmaking, I love cameras. Tejas here behind the video camera today. So this to me is a really fun creative process. And I think that if you're going to hear from startup founders, why not get to meet them too? And I love video podcasts. I think it's one of the coolest things that has happened with the podcasting space. I think it's just an amazing format, so I really want to explore here. I think that you'll be enriched as a listener by getting to hear new perspectives and hopefully entertained in taking to the polls on Twitter and figuring out if these startups are a big break or a big mistake. I don't know right now so far in the podcast if you guys think this is a big break or a big mistake, but hopefully I can convince you. So this is our first episode. We have startup founders coming on for future episodes, and we are going to be spreading the word in San Francisco to other founders, to people in the startup and tech space about this podcast, and hopefully reaching a bigger audience for these startups. They could get a customer list, they could launch their product, they could get, newsletter interest, and they can actually get some feedback on their idea and have a practice pitch here and really find out how people perceive their idea, or at least how I can roast them. And so really for the startups, this is an opportunity to share what they're working on. A lot of these startups are going to be early stage. Some of them are going to be just ideas that a startup founder is pitching that maybe they came up on the way here and they just want to pitch it to see what you guys think. We're going to be on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify streaming. So why should you come here when you can learn about startups other places? Well, I'm in San Francisco, which is where lots of startups come to get built. Lots of founders come here to build their companies, and I'm going to be giving you startups in their early stage. So they may not have launched yet. They may not have even developed their product yet. And so you're going to really hear from entrepreneurs who are early in their journey and building things from the ground up. And I want to be able to share that with you. A lot of the pitch shows go for startups that are further along and really have a product to share. And I want you guys to be able to hear from founders who are just starting out. Is that a big break or a big mistake? That's what I want to know. Would you guys want to see later stage founders? Would you guys want to see people doing different types of businesses? I want to actually hear from our studio audience on what they want to see. So let's go outside and ask them.
Okay, so my first question is, how often do you think you can get guests on, and how often can we get introduced to new apps and new people?
That's a great question. My goal is for new guests to come on at least once or twice a month. I have some interested friends at the moment. Friends are those that are open to being roasted on a podcast like this, and hopefully once we're able to share a link or at least give them something to look at, other startups might be open to being guests. So we have about 3 guests lined up and are still looking for more.
What kind of creators and entrepreneurs are you hoping that you can have on the podcast and develop something together? What are you looking at, in which sector, or is it something more wide spectrum, and are you figuring out what your niche has to be, or you just want to interview everybody in all the fields?
I think what's really exciting is startups that have an interesting idea that you may not have heard of before. And if a startup has a lot of traction, they could absolutely come on as well. And they can also be early stage. So I think I'm looking for any startups that are open to being on a show like this. I would love to not only work with startups, but to work with entrepreneurs who maybe have a business, but thought of an idea they came up with on the train and want to see if people would actually go for it. It could be an idea that's extremely silly or that isn't very reasonable, but I want to see them defend that idea and see if they could really convince the deal makers that it's a big break and not a big mistake. As far as, why a startup should come on, it's a great place to, share the ideas that they're working on and also be able to tell about the entrepreneurial journey and the startup journey and what it's been like for them and share, their process of building.
And are you hoping you can find new venture capitalists who would be interested in investing in apps like this? And are you open to interviewing those kind of people as well, so that people watching the podcast can get to know what kind of field investors are ready to invest in and what they're looking for, so that would help them grow their app or do a startup of their own?
Yeah, totally. I am open to having anyone on the show, even if they are not a founder. It could be someone who has never thought of starting a business before and wants to pitch an idea. And that could be an investor or a VC who is around a lot of startups and probably has a list of ideas that they want to work on or thought of a good startup idea. And this is a great place to share that. I'm going to hopefully try to get investors and VCs to watch this so that the startups can possibly be in front of some new people with their startup idea. I would love to see success stories where someone watches this startup and actually wants to invest in it, or they actually get some customers, or they're able to show that there is some traction here with customers thinking that this is a big break. And hopefully this can help their entrepreneurial journey. If there are success stories, I would love to have them on the show again. If their startup gains any traction or not, I would love to have them on as a guest judge. And I think it would be great to have VCs or investors on as a guest judge as well. So that's something I would love to do in the future, is to have more guest judges. You know, just like my character is the deal maker, they can have their character. And I think that would be really fun. So that's what I'm looking to do. Anyone who wants to come on the show should absolutely express interest and pitch me. I'm glad we heard from those deal makers. I think that, you know, people who are interested in business, people who are founders themselves or working in tech, or are just curious about tech space, are people who would watch this show. I am going to be heading to Twitter, DMing the show link for the startup founders who come on the show so that they can hopefully find people that would be interested in their business from the episodes. So this is really a show about founding a business, being a startup founder. It's something that is depicted in the media a lot. You have shows like Silicon Valley, you have movies about building businesses, and businesses in the news all the time, and startup founders and the businesses that they're building are constantly being covered. So that's what we're all about. But how do we get the message out about this podcast? The problem is that we don't even have a social media page yet. So I need to think about this. I don't know. I'm not sure what we should do. I think, you know, we could definitely start the Twitter page. That's a start. We can make some TikToks. What does our studio audience think about how to get the word out about the podcast?
So most of the people who watch your content are gonna be on YouTube Shorts, maybe TikTok, Instagram. Your key audience are probably gonna be from the YouTube. Creating reels, like shorts which go on
Yes.
YouTube, I think is a good way to get people to be interested in what you're doing.
Absolutely. You heard it here. Okay, so creating shorts and creating TikTok content. So that's absolutely right, is we are a YouTube podcast and a lot of people are going to be discovering this show for the first time on YouTube. So it's very important that we utilize all of their different types of social media, their YouTube shorts, their TikTok, so that people can find us. Let us know how you found us. Hopefully you can see us using those tools and how we're going to grow this podcast. I love that idea. Okay, great. I am seeing confetti. I think this is a fantastic idea. Let's do it. Okay, YouTube Shorts, you got a deal. So what's next? What's next is we bring our first startup founder into the deal room. And then we are going to start making short form content. The facts are, the show is called American Dealmaker. And what are the numbers? The numbers are that we have some guests that have said they're going to come on the show, and we are excited about that. That is traction for us. Let's talk big picture. The best case scenario is that startups that come on the show get a deal. The worst case scenario is that they get some feedback on their idea. For me personally, I love filmmaking and I have always dreamed of directing. And I've always dreamed of directing movies. I have always loved screenwriting, and I've always loved filming and being on set. And there is a magic of filmmaking. So for me, this is personal. This is a really exciting opportunity to make film. There's a show called The Pitch, and this is another podcast where startups come on to pitch to investors. Now for us, we are actually having the Dealmakers vote on if it's a big break or a big mistake. So I think it's really cool to see what other podcasters are doing in the space, especially surrounding startups. And I really love a lot of the content that I've seen out there. And it's actually really awesome that startup founders are open to coming on podcasts and really sharing their journey. And it's something that I think is great for the founder community, that everybody's sharing their ideas, everybody's talking about what's important to them and what their journey and story has been. So for me as a founder, to share a bit of an anecdote, I started my founding journey with WorldPost. It's a notebook app for journaling. And I'm now launching Applause, which is a social media app for sharing lists and notes and unfinished works. So a place to get feedback, a place to be able to share your movie recommendations, your recipes, your morning routine, and your goals. So this has taken me to become a technical coder, and that's something I never thought it would be. I have a art and film background. So that is a challenge that I had to overcome, was to learn a little bit more about the technical side of things and to be able to manage and build my dream, which was these apps surrounding writing. And as a writer myself, I knew that there was a use for it because I had a personal problem of not feeling inspired to write on my phone, and I wanted to see that community with social media, and that's why I'm building Applause, to be able to build some sort of community surrounding writing and unfinished works and getting feedback. I never thought I would be a startup founder, but I got bitten by the startup bug. Being a San Francisco native and growing up here might have had something to do with that, but once you're bitten by the startup bug, you cannot be unbitten. And so here I am today, and I am still interested in startups and working on startups. That's, as a deal maker, something that I want to represent, is the perspective of a startup founder. As I am interviewing the guests, I want to be able to ask them questions that are useful to me as a startup founder, or that I think would be useful to entrepreneurs and to startup founders, people who are interested in making their own businesses and have ideas about business. So that is my perspective as a deal maker, and sometime I hope to be able to bring on guest deal makers with perhaps more startup experience than me, and they can also share their personal journey and ask the guests questions that would be from another perspective. Got it. Okay, so one last question before the deal makers vote. What do you think is relevant to their decision? If it's a big break or a big mistake? Asking the studio audience.
Yeah, I think it's a big break. It's a good perspective which not a lot of shows have gotten, and if someone is looking at a perspective of, you know, doing something for the society or doing something that makes our lives better, I think this is a great place for even VCs to find people like this and start investing in them or get in touch with them or, you know, talk to them. So I don't think there exists such a platform, and it's a good idea. It's a big break.
Awesome! Good to hear. That is great feedback. And I love that you said that. It's all about early stage founders are the most passionate. They are people who want to change the world and make the world a better place. What better way to hear from the people building businesses than to ask them and find out, you know, why are they building this business? What is it they want to do? And I think you're right. Early stage founders are more so open and excited to share their ideas because they're new. They want to get them out to the world. So, yay! I think that is an awesome idea. So, what's next for Applause is a question that we had from the studio audience. So, the very first version of the app will be on iOS. It will be available on the Apple App Store, and that's where you can download it and start sharing your content. Start sharing your morning routine, your habits, your goals, some ideas that you have, some movie recommendations that you have, because this is going to be how the app starts, is really people who start sharing on it. So once it's launched, I'm super excited for everyone to try it out. Again, a brand new social media app for notes. So anything that you write in the Notes app, it could be searchable and it could be discoverable on Applause. So we're going to be using the clap emoji to create a positive community, and anyone can go to theapplause.com to keep track of the app's progress. And I'm super excited to put it in your guys' hands on the Apple App Store soon. So yes, this podcast is being built as we speak. We learned how to do the audio equipment, camera, Tejas is on set behind the camera, and we also had Jay on set behind the camera, learning new technology. It's exciting. What I love about this, I love being able to be on set, having this film community, even just in the beginning of this podcast, and I love to bring in guests and talk to them and share it. The 30-second elevator pitch is, this is a show called American Dealmaker where startups come on and you guys decide if it's a big break or a big mistake. We head to Twitter after the show and tally up a vote. And the most simplistic version of this pitch would be, it's a pitch show where startups pitch their ideas and get feedback. All right, deal makers, now it's your turn. Let's vote on if this is a big break or a big mistake. Head on over to Twitter, and our Twitter account username, The American Deal, is where you'll find the poll. Let us know if we have a deal. Handshake emoji or trash can emoji. Say if you would or would not make a deal. I think this is a big break, but the problem The problem is that I need a couple more startups to pitch me. You know what? I'm gonna make myself a deal. I'm gonna get a bunch of startup founders to come over and pitch me in this video podcast show. Welcome to the Deal Room, where you'll see pitches like this made to you by startup founders. It's all gonna happen here on American Dealmaker. You know what? I am going to cut myself a break. I really like this idea, so I'm gonna give myself all 4 of the Kit Kat bar. I think it's a big break. Thank you for watching. Thank you to our studio audience and you, the Dealmakers. And stay tuned for our first startup podcast guest. And let us know what you want to see on a future episode of American Dealmaker. A huge shout out to you guys for watching the first episode. I'll see you guys in the next episode.